I was sitting in the emergency room at 2:47 a.m., blood crusted under my swollen nose, when the doctor asked me the question that would change everything. "Has this happened before?" she said, studying the X-ray images on her tablet. I wanted to lie, the way I'd been lying for 3 years. I wanted to say it was just an accident, just roughhousing, just boys being boys, like my parents always said. But something about the fluorescent lights and the antiseptic smell, and the way my stepbrother Tyler had smirked when he dropped me off, made the truth claw its way up my throat. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. "Yes," I whispered, and that single word cracked open a dam I'd been holding back since I was 14. The night it all came crashing down started like any other Wednesday in our house in Cedar Hills. Mom was working late at the law firm again, and my stepdad Rick was in his home office with the door closed, probably on another conference call with his contracting company. That left me and Tyler alone in the living room, which had become my personal nightmare scenario over the past 3 years. Tyler was 19, 2 years older than me, with that cocky quarterback swagger that made adults think he was charming and responsible. He'd moved in when Mom married Rick 4 years ago, and at first, I thought having a big brother might be cool. I was so naive. What I got instead was a predator who learned early on that our parents would always take his word over mine. That Wednesday, I was curled up on the couch doing calculus homework when Tyler came downstairs from his room. I could smell the energy drink and Axe body spray combination that always made my stomach turn. He plopped down next to me, too close, the way he always did. "What's the nerd working on tonight?" he said, grabbing my notebook before I could stop him. "Tyler, give it back. I have a test tomorrow." I reached for it, but he held it above his head, grinning like this was some innocent sibling teasing. "Maybe I should help you study," he said, his voice dropping to that tone that made my skin crawl. "I'm real good at tutoring." I lunged for the notebook, and that's when it happened. His elbow came down hard across my face, and I heard the crack before I felt the explosion of pain. Blood poured from my nose immediately, staining my yellow sweater and splattering across my math homework. "Oh shit, Melody!" Tyler jumped up, suddenly the concerned big brother. "I'm so sorry. You just moved too fast and I didn't see you coming." I cupped my hands under my nose, trying to catch the blood, tasting the metallic flavor in my mouth. "You did that on purpose," I gasped. "Are you crazy? It was an accident. You know I'd never hurt you on purpose." But I caught the flash of satisfaction in his eyes before he put on his worried face. Mom and Rick came running when they heard me crying. By then, Tyler had already gotten me ice and paper towels, playing the helpful stepbrother role to perfection. "What happened?" Mom asked, kneeling beside me on the couch. "Melody and I were just messing around with her homework, and she jumped up too fast when I was stretching. My elbow caught her nose," Tyler said smoothly. "I feel terrible about it." Rick patted Tyler's shoulder. "These things happen. You kids play too rough sometimes." "Mom, he did it on purpose," I said through the bloody tissues. "He's been—" "Melody, enough," Mom cut me off. "Tyler already explained what happened. It was clearly an accident." "But boys will be boys, honey," Rick said with that dismissive tone he'd perfected. "Tyler's just not used to having a little sister around yet. You'll both learn to be more careful." I stared at them in disbelief. Tyler was nodding along, playing the part of the remorseful stepbrother who just needed to be more aware of his strength. Meanwhile, blood was still dripping from my nose, and I could feel it starting to swell. "I think we should take her to the hospital," Tyler said, and I almost laughed at the audacity. "Just to make sure it's not broken or anything." "You're right," Mom said, grabbing her purse. "Rick, can you drive us?" "I can take her," Tyler volunteered. "You guys have been working so hard lately. I caused the problem. I should fix it." And that's how I ended up in Tyler's Jeep at 11 o'clock at night, driving to Mercy General with the person who had just deliberately broken my nose. The ride was silent, except for the radio and my sniffling. Tyler didn't say a word until we pulled into the hospital parking lot. "You know," he said, turning off the engine but not getting out, "accidents happen all the time, especially to people who don't watch where they're going." The threat was clear, but I was 17 and tired and in pain, so I just nodded and got out of the car. The triage nurse took one look at my face and fast-tracked me to an examination room. That's where I met Dr. Sarah Chen, the emergency physician who would become the first adult in 3 years to actually listen to me. She was probably in her early 30s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the sort of calm competence that made you want to trust her immediately. She examined my nose gently, asking questions about the pain level and whether I was dizzy or nauseous. "We're going to need to take some x-rays," she said, "and probably an MRI to check for any soft tissue damage." Tyler shifted in his chair by the door. "Is all that really necessary? I mean, it was just an accident." Dr. Chen looked at him for a long moment, then back at me. "I like to be thorough with facial injuries. They can be more complex than they appear." The x-ray showed a clean break across the bridge of my nose. Painful, but it would heal. It was the MRI that changed everything. When Dr. Chen came back with the results, she closed the door and pulled up a chair close to my bed. "Melody, I need to ask you some questions, and I want you to know that you can speak freely. What I'm seeing on these scans concerns me." My heart started racing. "What do you mean?" "The MRI shows evidence of multiple healed fractures in your nasal area, cheekbone, and orbital socket. Some of these injuries appear to be months or even years old." She leaned forward, her voice gentle but serious. "This pattern is consistent with repeated trauma to the face." I felt the room spin a little. Tyler was suddenly very interested in his phone, scrolling through social media like he wasn't listening to every word. "Has this happened before, Melody? Have you been hit in the face multiple times?" I looked at Tyler, who was still pretending not to pay attention, but had gone rigid in his chair. Then I looked back at Dr. Chen, and something about her steady gaze made me feel safe for the first time in years. "Yes," I whispered. The single word seemed to echo in the small room. Tyler's head snapped up from his phone, his eyes narrowing. "When did these other injuries occur?" Dr. Chen asked. My mouth felt dry. "Different times over the past few years, but everyone said they were accidents. Can you tell me about them?" I glanced at Tyler again. He was staring at me now, and I could practically hear him calculating how to spin this. "There was one time about 8 months ago," I said slowly. "Tyler was helping me move furniture in my room, and the corner of my dresser hit my cheek when we were carrying it." "That was a total accident," Tyler interrupted, his voice tight. "The thing was heavier than we thought." Dr. Chen held up a hand. "I'd like to hear from Melody, please." She turned back to me. "What else?" "Last year, we were playing basketball in the driveway, and the ball hit me in the face really hard. Tyler was the one shooting it." My voice was getting stronger now, the words coming easier. "And there was another time when we were roughhousing in the living room, and I fell and hit the coffee table." "These all involve Tyler?" Dr. Chen asked. "I was present for all of them, yeah," Tyler said, leaning forward. "Look, doctor, Melody's kind of clumsy, and we do play kind of rough sometimes. I always feel terrible when she gets hurt." "Melody," Dr. Chen said, ignoring Tyler completely, "did any of these feel intentional to you?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. This was my moment to either keep lying or tell the truth that had been eating me alive for 3 years. Tyler was staring at me with an expression I knew well, the look that said I'd better choose my words very carefully. "Yes," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Some of them did." Tyler shot up from his chair. "Are you serious right now? Melody, what the hell are you saying?" Dr. Chen pressed a button on the wall, and within seconds, a security guard appeared at the door. "Sir, I'm going to need you to wait outside while I finish examining my patient." "I'm her ride home," Tyler protested. "Her parents asked me to stay with her." "The hospital can arrange transportation," Dr. Chen said firmly. "Please wait in the lobby." After Tyler left, the room felt different, like I could finally breathe properly. Dr. Chen sat back down and took out a notepad. "Melody, what you've just told me is very serious. I need to ask you some more questions, and I want you to know that everything you say is confidential unless you're in immediate danger." Over the next hour, I told her everything. About the time Tyler cornered me in the laundry room and pressed himself against me, claiming he was just trying to reach the detergent. About how he'd started accidentally walking into my room when I was changing, always with some excuse about looking for something. About the way he'd find reasons to touch me, adjusting my posture when I was doing homework, putting his hands on my waist when squeezing past me in the kitchen, giving me massages that lasted too long and went places they shouldn't. I told her about the escalating accidents that always happened when we were alone. The basketball that somehow always found my face during our one-on-one games. The time he was helping me hang Christmas lights, and the ladder mysteriously shifted, sending me crashing to the ground with a sprained wrist. The playful wrestling matches that left me with bruises on my ribs and arms. And your parents? Dr. Chen asked. What do they say when these things happen? They always believe Tyler, I said, the words bitter in my mouth. He's the golden child. He gets good grades, he's charming, he helps around the house. When I try to tell them that some of these accidents don't feel accidental, they say I'm being dramatic or that I need to learn to play nice with my stepbrother. Dr. Chen nodded, making notes. What about tonight specifically? Walk me through what happened. I described the homework incident, how Tyler had grabbed my notebook and held it out of reach, how he'd made that comment about tutoring me with that creepy tone he used when we were alone. When you reached for the notebook, did you feel like his elbow connected with your nose accidentally? I shook my head. No, he saw me coming. I could tell by his eyes. And afterward, when he was getting me ice, he seemed almost happy, like he was pleased with himself. Dr. Chen finished writing and looked up at me. Melody, I want you to know that I believe you. The pattern of injuries I'm seeing, combined with what you've told me, suggests that you've been experiencing systematic abuse. The word hit me like a physical blow. Abuse. I'd never called it that, never let myself think of it that way. Tyler was my stepbrother. We lived in the same house. Our parents were married. It was just rough play, just accidents, just boys being boys. I know this is overwhelming, Dr. Chen continued, but you're not alone anymore. There are people who can help you, and there are legal protections available. What does that mean? I asked. It means we're going to document everything. I'm going to take photos of your current injuries and include detailed notes about the healed fractures in your medical record. I'm also going to connect you with a social worker who specializes in family violence. Family violence? Another phrase that made my stomach clench. Will you have to tell my parents? Because you're 17, there are certain reporting requirements, especially given the pattern of abuse and the fact that you're living with your abuser. But we'll walk through everything step by step, and you'll have support throughout the process. A knock on the door interrupted us. A woman in her 40s with shoulder-length brown hair and a warm smile entered the room. Melody, this is Janet Rodriguez. She's a social worker here at the hospital. Janet pulled up another chair. Hi, Melody. Dr. Chen has filled me in on the situation. I want you to know that my job is to help keep you safe and to make sure you have all the resources you need. What happens now? I asked. Well, first we need to make sure you have a safe place to go tonight. Do you have any relatives or friends you could stay with? I thought about it. Most of my friends lived with their parents, and I didn't want to drag anyone else into this mess. My mom's sister lived 2 states away. My dad, who I barely remembered, lived somewhere in California. My grandma lives about an hour away, I said finally, my mom's mom, but she's in her 80s. That's okay, Janet said. We can call her. Sometimes grandparents are exactly the right people for situations like this. But what about school and my stuff? And my mom, she's going to be so upset. We'll figure all of that out, Janet assured me. The most important thing right now is getting you somewhere safe. Everything else can be handled. Dr. Chen checked her watch. Melody, I need to go check on other patients, but Janet is going to stay with you while we make some calls. Your nose is going to be sore for a few weeks, but it should heal fine. I've written you a prescription for pain medication. She paused at the door. I want you to know that what you did tonight, telling the truth, took incredible courage. You should be proud of yourself. After she left, Janet helped me call my grandmother. Nana answered on the second ring, sounding alert despite the late hour. Melody, sweetheart, what's wrong? Hearing her voice made me start crying again. Nana, I'm in the hospital. Something happened with Tyler, and I don't think I can go home tonight. What did that boy do to you? Her voice turned sharp. He broke my nose, and the doctor says, she says it's not the first time he's hurt me. There was a long pause. I'm coming to get you. What hospital? Mercy General, but Nana, it's so late. Melody Rose, I have been worried about you living in that house for 3 years. I'm getting in my car right now. Janet took the phone. Ma'am, this is Janet Rodriguez. I'm a social worker at the hospital. We do need Melody to have a safe place to stay tonight while we sort some things out. I couldn't hear Nana's response, but Janet was nodding. Yes, ma'am. We'll have all the paperwork ready when you get here. While we waited for Nana, Janet explained what would happen next. There would be a formal report filed with Child Protective Services. The police would need to take a statement. My parents would be contacted and informed of the situation. Tyler would likely be asked to leave the family home, at least temporarily. What if no one believes me? I asked. Tyler's really good at making himself look innocent. Melody, you have medical evidence. Multiple healed fractures don't lie, and Dr. Chen's notes tonight document a clear pattern of abuse. That's not something that can be dismissed as teenage drama. Around 4 a.m., Nana arrived looking like she'd thrown on the first clothes she could find, jeans, a sweatshirt, and tennis shoes. Her gray hair was in a messy ponytail, but her eyes were fierce and alert. Where is he? Were the first words out of her mouth. Tyler's in the lobby, Janet said. Good, because if I see that boy, I might do something that gets me arrested. Nana hugged me carefully, mindful of my injured nose. Oh, sweetheart, I should have listened to my gut years ago. What do you mean? Something about that boy never sat right with me. Too charming, too smooth, and your mom was so blinded by her new marriage that she couldn't see what was happening right under her nose. Nana signed the discharge papers while Janet explained the next steps. We'd meet with a detective tomorrow afternoon. I'd give a formal statement. There would probably be a court hearing within a few days to determine temporary custody arrangements. Your parents are going to be contacted first thing in the morning, Janet told me. They'll want to see you, but for now, you're safe to stay with your grandmother while we investigate. As we walked toward the hospital exit, I felt a strange mix of terror and relief. Tyler was somewhere in the lobby, probably texting his version of events to my parents. By tomorrow, everyone would know. There would be no going back to pretending everything was normal. But for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't going to sleep under the same roof as someone who hurt me. For the first time since Tyler moved in, I felt like I could breathe. Nana's house smelled like lavender and old books. She made me chamomile tea and tucked me into the guest bed with extra pillows to keep my head elevated. As I lay there, listening to her puttering around in the kitchen below, I thought about all the nights I'd pretended to be asleep when I heard Tyler's footsteps in the hallway outside my room. All the mornings I'd examined new bruises in the bathroom mirror, trying to figure out how to cover them with makeup. All the times I'd bitten back the truth because I knew no one would believe me. My phone had been buzzing constantly since we left the hospital. Texts from Mom, from Rick, even a few from Tyler. I turned it off without reading them. Whatever they had to say could wait until tomorrow. Tonight, for the first time in years, I was safe. I closed my eyes and felt something I'd almost forgotten existed. Peace. I woke up the next morning to the sound of my phone ringing downstairs. Nana had taken it from me the night before, saying I needed rest without interruption. The sunlight streaming through her lace curtains felt different somehow, gentler than the harsh fluorescent lights I'd grown accustomed to in our modern house in Cedar Hills. Everything about Nana's place felt like a sanctuary, from the handmade quilts to the family photos covering every surface. My nose throbbed as I sat up, and when I caught my reflection in the antique mirror across the room, I gasped. Both my eyes were blackened now, and my nose was swollen to twice its normal size. I looked like I'd been in a car accident. For the first time, I could see what other people would see, the unmistakable evidence of violence that couldn't be explained away as clumsiness or rough play. Nana appeared in the doorway with a breakfast tray, her face grim. "That was your mother on the phone," she said, setting the tray on the nightstand. "She's not handling this well." What did she say? A lot of things that aren't fit for repeating. The gist of it is that she thinks you're being manipulated by overzealous medical professionals, and she wants you to come home immediately so this can all be sorted out as a family. I picked at the scrambled eggs Nana had made, my stomach churning. She doesn't believe me. Your mother has invested 3 years in believing that Tyler is a good boy who just plays too rough. Admitting the truth would mean admitting she failed to protect you. Nana sat on the edge of the bed, her weathered hands folding in her lap. But that doesn't make the truth any less true. What about Rick? He's angrier than your mother, if that's possible. Apparently, Tyler is beside himself with worry about you, and Rick thinks this whole thing is some teenage revenge fantasy because you don't like having a stepbrother. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so infuriating. Tyler worried about me? Tyler, who had systematically terrorized me for 3 years while maintaining his perfect stepson facade. There's something else, Nana said gently. Janet called this morning. The detective wants to meet with you this afternoon, and Child Protective Services is opening a formal investigation. Your parents have been notified that they're not allowed to contact you directly until after you've given your statement. They're going to hate me forever, I whispered. No, sweetheart. They're going to be forced to face the truth they've been avoiding. There's a difference. After breakfast, Nana helped me ice my face and take the pain medication Dr. Chen had prescribed. The swelling was starting to go down, but the bruising was getting worse. We spent the morning in her garden, where she taught me how to deadhead her roses while she told me stories about my mom as a teenager. Your mother was stubborn even then, Nana said, clipping away dead blooms with practiced efficiency. Once she made up her mind about something, it was nearly impossible to change it. When she decided to marry Rick after only knowing him 8 months, I tried to talk her out of it. Not because Rick was a bad man, but because I didn't think she really knew what she was getting into. Did you ever worry about Tyler? Nana paused in her clipping. From the very beginning, there was something about that boy that didn't sit right with me. Too polished, too eager to please the adults. And the way he looked at you during family gatherings, she shook her head. I should have said something sooner. You couldn't have known. I'm your grandmother. It's my job to know when my granddaughter is in danger. Her voice was thick with regret. I failed you, Melody, but I won't fail you again. At 2 o'clock, Janet arrived to drive me to the police station. The detective assigned to my case was a woman named Detective Lisa Morrison, probably in her 40s, with short blonde hair and the kind of direct gaze that suggested she'd heard every lie in the book. Melody, I want you to know up front that I specialize in domestic violence and family abuse cases, she said, leading me to a small interview room. I've been doing this for 12 years, and I've seen patterns like yours before. The room had a table, 3 chairs, and a video camera mounted on the wall. Detective Morrison explained that they would be recording my statement and that I could take breaks whenever I needed them. I want you to start from the beginning, she said. When did Tyler first move into your house? I told her everything, starting with the day Tyler arrived with his duffel bags and charming smile. I described how the inappropriate touching started gradually, how the accidents became more frequent, how my complaints were dismissed by our parents. Detective Morrison took notes and asked clarifying questions, but never interrupted or rushed me. When I got to the part about Tyler cornering me in the laundry room 6 months earlier, Detective Morrison stopped writing and looked up. Can you describe that incident in detail? I closed my eyes, remembering. I was folding clothes after school. Tyler came downstairs and said he needed to get something from the storage closet. But to get there, he had to squeeze past me in this really narrow space between the washer and the wall. How narrow? Maybe 2 feet. Wide enough for one person, but if someone else wants to get by, you'd normally ask the other person to move. Did Tyler ask you to move? No, he just said, "Excuse me," and then pressed himself against my back to squeeze by. But he didn't just brush past me. He pressed his whole body against mine and stayed that way for way too long. I could feel him breathing on my neck. Detective Morrison made a note. Did you tell your parents about this? I tried to tell my mom later that night. I said Tyler had made me uncomfortable in the laundry room, and she said I was being oversensitive, that teenage boys don't always understand personal space, and I needed to be more direct about my boundaries. What did you say to that? I asked her what I was supposed to do if being direct made him angry, and she said that Tyler would never hurt me, that he was a good kid who was just still adjusting to having a stepsister. We went through incident after incident. The time Tyler volunteered to help me with my science project and spent the entire evening finding excuses to touch my hands and shoulders. The basketball games where the ball always seemed to find my face when I was winning. The wrestling matches that left me with fingerprint bruises on my arms. Let's talk about last night specifically, Detective Morrison said. Walk me through the homework incident. I described grabbing for my notebook, Tyler's elbow connecting with my nose, the immediate surge of blood and pain. But more importantly, I described Tyler's reaction. He seemed pleased, I said, not shocked or horrified like you'd expect if you just accidentally hurt someone. For just a second, before he put on his concerned act, he looked satisfied. Did your parents witness Tyler's immediate reaction? No, they came running when they heard me crying, but by then he was already playing the helpful stepbrother, getting me ice and paper towels. Detective Morrison asked about the ride to the hospital, Tyler's behavior in the emergency room, and his reaction when Dr. Chen started asking questions about previous injuries. When Dr. Chen mentioned the pattern of healed fractures, Tyler got very tense. He kept trying to insert himself in the conversation, explaining each incident as an accident. But he was nervous in a way I'd never seen before. How so? Usually, Tyler is incredibly smooth. He can lie without missing a beat. But in the hospital, he was fidgety. He kept checking his phone and shifting in his chair. When Dr. Chen asked if the injuries felt intentional to me, I could see panic in his eyes. We talked for over 2 hours. Detective Morrison asked about witnesses, physical evidence, any documentation I might have of the abuse. I told her about the photos I'd taken of bruises, saved in a hidden album on my phone, about the diary entries I'd written after particularly bad incidents, about my friend Sarah, who had noticed the pattern of injuries and asked if everything was okay at home. Melody, based on what you've told me and the medical evidence Dr. Chen documented, I believe you have a strong case, but I want you to understand what's going to happen next. She explained that Tyler would be interviewed, probably within the next day or two. My parents would also be questioned about their knowledge of the incidents and their responses to my complaints. There would likely be charges filed, though she couldn't say what specifically until the investigation was complete. Will I have to testify in court? Possibly. It depends on whether Tyler decides to accept a plea deal or fight the charges. Either way, you'll have victim's advocate to help you through the process. When we finished, Janet drove me back to Nana's house. My phone had been buzzing all afternoon with calls and texts from my parents, but I still wasn't ready to deal with them. Janet suggested I take the evening to process everything before deciding whether to respond. That night, Nana made her famous pot roast, and we ate dinner while watching old movies. It felt surreal, sitting in her cozy living room with my battered face, knowing that somewhere across town, Tyler was probably being questioned by Detective Morrison. I wondered what lies he was telling, how he was spinning 3 years of systematic abuse into innocent roughhousing. Around 9 o'clock, my phone rang. The caller ID showed my mom's number, and after a moment's hesitation, I answered. Melody? Oh, thank God. I've been trying to reach you all day. Her voice sounded strained, like she'd been crying. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to fall back into my old role of managing everyone else's emotions. But a bigger part of me was exhausted by the thought of taking care of the person who should have been taking care of me. Hi, Mom. Sweetheart, I need you to come home. This whole thing has gotten completely out of hand. Tyler is devastated. He's been crying all day about accidentally hurting you. Mom, it wasn't an accident. Melody, I know you're upset, but you can't really believe that Tyler would intentionally hurt you. He loves you like a sister. The word love in connection with Tyler made my stomach turn. Have you talked to the detective yet? Yes, and it was horrible. She kept asking all these leading questions, trying to make innocent family interactions sound sinister. She even asked about the time Tyler helped you with your science project, like there was something wrong with a brother helping his sister with homework. I closed my eyes, remembering Tyler's hands constantly touching mine during that science project, how he'd insisted on standing behind me with his arms around me to help me hold the microscope properly. Mom, that's not what happened. Then tell me what did happen, because I'm completely confused. One day we're a normal family dealing with typical teenage sibling rivalry, and the next day I'm being told my son is some kind of predator. He's not your son, I said quietly. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. What did you just say? Tyler isn't your son. He's Rick's son. And for 3 years, you've chosen to protect him instead of me.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
That's not fair, Melody. Tyler is part of our family now. So am I, or I'm supposed to be. I could hear her crying now, soft, hiccuping sobs that once would have made me apologize and try to fix everything. I don't understand how this happened, she whispered. I thought we were all getting along so well. We weren't, Mom. I tried to tell you that Tyler was making me uncomfortable, that some of the accidents didn't feel accidental. Every time you dismissed me. Because they were accidents. Tyler explained every single one of them. Tyler's explanations were lies. You're asking me to believe that this boy I've watched grow up, who's never shown a violent bone in his body, has been systematically abusing my daughter for 3 years? Yes, that's exactly what I'm asking you to believe. Another long silence. When Mom spoke again, her voice was different, harder. The detective said there might be charges filed, criminal charges. I know. Do you understand what that means for this family, for Tyler's future? He's supposed to start college in the fall. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Even now, faced with medical evidence and police involvement, her primary concern was protecting Tyler. What about my future, Mom? What about the last 3 years of my life? Don't be so dramatic, Melody. You're fine. A few bruises and a broken nose that's going to heal perfectly. Tyler's looking at possible jail time. I'm fine? I repeated. Mom, I have evidence of multiple facial fractures spanning 3 years. I have bruises on my ribs and arms. I've been living in fear in my own house. You're exaggerating. Those 2 words hit me like a physical blow. After everything, after the medical evidence and the police report and the hours of detailed testimony, my own mother was telling me I was exaggerating. I have to go, I said. Melody, wait, don't hang up. We need to figure out how to fix this. There's nothing to fix, Mom. There's only the truth. I hung up and turned off my phone. Nana, who had been discreetly cleaning up in the kitchen, came and sat beside me on the couch. That didn't go well, she observed. She still doesn't believe me. Even with everything the doctor found, even with the police involved, she thinks I'm being dramatic. Your mother is in denial, sweetheart. Accepting the truth would mean acknowledging that she failed as a parent. That's a hard thing for anyone to face. So she'd rather sacrifice me to protect her perfect blended family fantasy. It's not that simple. Isn't it? I turned to face her. She literally just told me that Tyler's future is more important than the 3 years he spent terrorizing me. Nana sighed. Fear makes people do terrible things. Your mother is afraid of losing Rick, afraid of admitting she made a mistake, afraid of what the community will think. That doesn't excuse her behavior, but it might help you understand it. I don't want to understand it. I want her to choose me for once. She might yet. Sometimes people need time to come around to difficult truths. But I wasn't feeling optimistic. The conversation with Mom had made it clear that my family was closing ranks around Tyler, and I was being cast as the hysterical troublemaker trying to destroy an innocent boy's life. The next morning brought a call from Detective Morrison. Tyler had been arrested the night before and charged with multiple counts of assault and sexual harassment of a minor. He was being held pending a bail hearing scheduled for that afternoon. "How did the interview go?" I asked. He denied everything, as expected, claimed all the injuries were accidents and that you were fabricating the sexual harassment allegations because you were jealous of the attention he got from your parents. Jealous? According to Tyler, you've always resented him for taking your place as the favored child, and you've been looking for ways to get him in trouble since he moved in. The accusation was so backwards it was almost funny. Tyler, who got praised for every minor accomplishment while my achievements were ignored. Tyler, who could do no wrong while I was criticized for every perceived flaw. What happens now? The bail hearing is this afternoon. Given that you're living in the same house and he's been charged with harming you, the judge will likely set conditions that prevent him from returning home, at least until trial. What about my parents? They're standing by him. They've hired a lawyer and are claiming this is all a misunderstanding that got blown out of proportion by mandatory reporting requirements. I wasn't surprised, but it still hurt. My mother, who used to check my homework and drive me to dance practice and worry when I was 5 minutes late getting home, was now actively working against me to protect the person who had been hurting me. Nana made lunch while I processed this information. I kept thinking about all the times I'd made excuses for my parents' behavior, all the times I'd convinced myself that they just didn't understand what Tyler was really like. But the truth was simpler and more painful than that. They knew exactly what Tyler was like, and they'd chosen to prioritize his comfort over my safety. That afternoon, Janet called with an update from the bail hearing. Tyler had been released on bond with conditions that prohibited him from returning to our family home or having any contact with me. He would be staying with his biological mother in another state until the trial. "How did your parents react?" I asked. "Not well. Your stepfather was furious about the no-contact order. Your mother broke down in tears when the judge explained that Tyler couldn't come home. What about me? Did anyone ask about where I'm supposed to live?" The judge ordered a temporary custody arrangement. "You'll stay with your grandmother while CPS completes their investigation. Your parents will have supervised visitation if you want it." If I wanted it? The phrase felt strange. For the first time in my life, I had a choice about whether to see my parents. The idea was both liberating and terrifying. That evening, I finally turned my phone back on. There were dozens of missed calls and text messages from my parents, but also messages from friends who had heard about what happened. Sarah had texted multiple times, asking if I was okay and offering to come visit. My cousin Emma, who lived in Portland, had sent a long message saying she'd always thought something was off about Tyler and that she was proud of me for speaking up. But there were other messages too. Classmates asking if it was true that I'd had Tyler arrested. A few messages that seemed supportive, but felt more like gossip-seeking than genuine concern. One particularly harsh message from Tyler's ex-girlfriend calling me a liar and attention seeker. I realized that this wasn't just about my family anymore. The story was spreading through our social circles, and people were taking sides. I would be returning to school in a few weeks as the girl who accused her stepbrother of abuse, the girl who broke up a family, the girl who might be lying. "I don't know if I can go back to school," I told Nana over dinner. "Everyone's going to be talking about me." "Let them talk," she said firmly. "You told the truth. That's nothing to be ashamed of." "But what if people don't believe me? What if they think I'm just causing drama? Then those people don't deserve to be in your life. Real friends will support you. Real friends will believe you when you tell them someone hurt you." I thought about Sarah, who had been asking questions about my injuries for months, who had seemed relieved when I finally told her the truth. I thought about my cousin Emma, who had seen through Tyler's charm from the beginning. There were people who believed me, who had been waiting for me to speak up. But there were also people like my parents, who would rather believe comfortable lies than face difficult truths. People who cared more about maintaining appearances than protecting the vulnerable. Later that night, I sat in Nana's garden under the stars and thought about the girl I'd been just a week ago. The girl who swallowed her pain to keep the peace, who made excuses for people who hurt her, who believed that love meant enduring whatever people chose to put you through. That girl was gone. In her place was someone harder, wiser, more careful about who she trusted. Someone who understood that family didn't mean anything if it came without safety and respect. The road ahead would be difficult. There would be a trial, probably months of legal proceedings. There would be family members who never forgave me for speaking up. There would be classmates who whispered about me in hallways. But for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't afraid to go to sleep. For the first time since Tyler moved in, I knew I was safe. And that knowledge, hard won as it was, felt like the most precious thing in the world. The truth had set me free, even if it had cost me everything I thought I knew about family. Even if it meant starting over completely. Even if some people would never understand why I chose my own safety over keeping their secrets. I chose me. Finally, after years of choosing everyone else, I chose me. The trial was set for 6 weeks later, which meant 6 weeks of living in limbo while lawyers prepared their cases and my family continued to unravel. I'd been staying with Nana for 3 weeks when the first real surprise came. Rick filed for divorce. I found out through a phone call from my Aunt Claire, who had heard it from her neighbor who worked at the courthouse. My mother hadn't told me directly, though I suppose I shouldn't have been surprised. We'd only spoken twice since that awful phone conversation, both times through supervised visits arranged by CPS that felt more like hostage negotiations than family reunions. "Your mom's taking it pretty hard," Aunt Claire said. "She's convinced that if you just recant your statement, Rick would call off the divorce and Tyler could come home." The twisted logic of it made my head spin. In my mother's mind, I was the one destroying the family by refusing to lie about being abused, not Tyler, who had actually committed the abuse, not Rick, who was abandoning his wife when she needed support, me, for having the audacity to tell the truth. "She's asking everyone in the family to talk to you," Claire continued. "She wants us to convince you to drop the charges." "And are you calling to convince me?" There was a pause. "Actually, I'm calling to tell you that I think you're brave as hell, and I'm sorry it took me this long to say so." It turned out that Claire had her own suspicions about Tyler. During family gatherings, she'd noticed how he always seemed to find excuses to touch me, how he'd appear whenever I was alone, how I'd grown quieter and more withdrawn over the years. "I should have said something," she admitted. "But it's hard to accuse someone of something so serious based on just a feeling, you know?" I understood. Tyler had been careful, calculated. He'd never done anything obviously inappropriate in front of witnesses. His touches were always plausibly innocent, his accidents always believable. It was only when you looked at the pattern over time that the picture became clear. "Have you talked to Mom about your suspicions?" I tried. She hung up on me. "According to your mother, everyone who believes your story has been brainwashed by feminist propaganda or anti-male bias." The conversation left me feeling hollow. My mother wasn't just in denial anymore. She was actively creating conspiracy theories to avoid facing reality. In her version of events, I was a confused teenager being manipulated by vindictive social workers, biased doctors, and family members who had always been jealous of her happy marriage. The narrative was so elaborate and so divorced from reality that I began to understand something fundamental about my mother that I'd never seen before. She had built her entire identity around being the perfect wife and mother, the woman who had successfully blended two families into one harmonious unit. Admitting that Tyler had been abusing me would mean admitting that she had failed in the most basic way possible, to protect her own child. So instead, she had chosen to sacrifice me to preserve her self-image. It was a choice that revealed something about her character that I would never be able to unsee. School started the week before the trial, and I decided to go back. Nana had offered to homeschool me for the rest of the year, but I didn't want to hide. I didn't want Tyler to take away any more of my life than he already had. The first day was brutal. I could feel people staring at me in the hallways, hear conversations stop when I walked by. Some of it was curiosity, some of it was sympathy, and some of it was judgment. I heard whispers about family loyalty and false accusations, and girls who cried wolf. But I also found unexpected allies. My chemistry teacher, Mrs. Patterson, pulled me aside after class to tell me that she'd been worried about me for months. She'd noticed my frequent injuries and how I'd sometimes flinch when people moved too quickly near me. "I should have asked more questions," she said. "I'm sorry I didn't." Sarah, my best friend since middle school, became my constant companion.
She walked with me between classes and sat with me at lunch, creating a buffer between me and the worst of the gossip. When Tyler's ex-girlfriend confronted me in the bathroom, calling me a liar and a homewrecker, Sarah stepped between us. "You need to back off," Sarah told her firmly. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know Tyler," the girl shot back. "He would never hurt anyone." "Then you don't know Tyler as well as you think you do," Sarah replied. It was Sarah who told me about the rumors circulating among Tyler's friends. Apparently, he was claiming that I'd been in love with him, and that when he rejected my advances, I'd fabricated the abuse allegations out of spite. The accusation was so vile and so backwards that it made me physically ill. Tyler, who had spent 3 years making unwanted sexual comments and touching me inappropriately, was now claiming that I had been pursuing him. "People who know you don't believe it," Sarah assured me, "but some of Tyler's buddies are spreading it around pretty aggressively." I realized that Tyler's defense strategy was becoming clear. He was going to paint me as a scorned teenager who had seduced him and then cried abuse when he didn't reciprocate my feelings. It was a narrative designed to shift blame onto me while making him look like the victim of a vindictive girl's fantasy. The strategy was particularly insidious because it played into existing prejudices about teenage Earls being dramatic and manipulative. It gave people permission to dismiss my testimony as the ravings of an unstable adolescent, rather than the carefully documented account of systematic abuse. Detective Morrison called me the week before the trial to prepare me for what Tyler's lawyer would likely argue. "He's going to try to make you look unstable," she warned. "He'll bring up every time you were ever disciplined at school, every argument you had with your parents, anything that makes you seem rebellious or dishonest. But that doesn't have anything to do with Tyler hurting me." "No, it doesn't. But the defense's job is to create reasonable doubt, and if they can make the jury question your credibility, they might be able to do that." She walked me through the kinds of questions I could expect. Tyler's lawyer would ask about my relationship with my parents, my academic performance, whether I'd ever lied about anything. He would try to suggest that my injuries were self-inflicted or the result of my own clumsiness. He would imply that I was jealous of Tyler's relationship with my parents and had fabricated the abuse to get him in trouble. "The most important thing is to stick to the facts," Detective Morrison advised. "Don't let him bait you into getting emotional or defensive. Just tell the truth calmly and clearly." The night before the trial, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the ways it could go wrong, all the reasons the jury might not believe me. Tyler was charismatic and well-liked. I was just a teenager with a history of family conflict. What if the jury decided I was lying? What if Tyler walked free and everyone believed his version of events? Nana found me sitting in the kitchen at 3 in the morning, staring out the window at her moonlit garden. "Second thoughts?" she asked, settling into the chair beside me. "Terrified thoughts," I corrected. "That's normal. What you're doing takes incredible courage." "What if I can't do it? What if I get up there and fall apart?" "Then you fall apart," Nana said simply. "And then you pick yourself up and keep going. Because the alternative is letting Tyler get away with what he did to you."
But what if the jury doesn't believe me? Then at least you'll know you told the truth. Sometimes that's all we can do, sweetheart. Tell the truth and hope it's enough. The courthouse was smaller than I'd expected, less imposing than the grand buildings you see in movies. I wore a navy blue dress that Nana had bought for me, something conservative and respectable that wouldn't distract from my testimony. Tyler was already there when we arrived, sitting at the defense table in a suit that made him look younger and more innocent than I remembered. His hair was neatly combed, and he'd lost weight during the weeks away from home. His lawyer had clearly coached him on his appearance. My parents sat in the gallery behind Tyler, my mother wearing dark sunglasses despite being indoors. Rick looked angry and uncomfortable, like he'd rather be anywhere else. They didn't acknowledge me when I walked in. The prosecutor, a woman named Jennifer Walsh, had explained the process to me the day before. She would call me to testify first, walking me through the timeline of Tyler's abuse. Then Tyler's lawyer would cross-examine me, trying to poke holes in my story. After that, other witnesses would testify, including Dr. Chen and Detective Morrison. When my name was called, I walked to the witness stand on unsteady legs. The courtroom seemed enormous from up there, filled with faces I recognized and strangers I didn't. I could feel Tyler watching me, but I didn't look at him. "Please state your name for the record," Ms. Walsh began. "Melody Rose Patterson." And how old are you, Melody? 17. She guided me through the basic facts first. When Tyler moved in, how our parents met, the structure of our blended family. Then we moved to the more difficult territory. Can you tell the court about the first time Tyler made you uncomfortable? I described the laundry room incident, Tyler pressing himself against me unnecessarily, my failed attempt to tell my mother about it. Ms. Walsh asked detailed questions about each subsequent incident, building a timeline of escalating abuse. When Tyler broke your nose on the night of July 15th, did you believe it was an accident? No, I could see it coming. He looked right at me before his elbow connected with my face. How did you know it wasn't an accident? Because of the look in his eyes. He wasn't surprised or horrified like you'd be if you accidentally hurt someone. He looked satisfied. Tyler's lawyer objected, claiming I couldn't know what Tyler was thinking based on his facial expression. The judge sustained the objection, but I'd already said what I needed to say. The cross-examination was worse than I'd imagined. Tyler's lawyer, a smooth-talking man in his 50s, immediately went on the attack. Ms. Patterson, isn't it true that you've always resented Tyler's presence in your family? No, that's not true. Didn't you tell your friend Sarah Martinez that you wished Tyler had never moved in? I remembered that conversation, but he was taking it completely out of context. I said that after he hurt me. I was upset. So you did say it? Yes, but thank you. Now, isn't it true that you've been disciplined at school multiple times for lying? I've never been disciplined for lying. He pulled out a file. According to your school records, you were suspended for 3 days in 10th grade for cheating on a biology exam. That's not lying, that's cheating. And I didn't cheat, I was wrongly accused. So you deny wrongdoing even when caught? Ms. Walsh objected before I could answer, but the damage was done. Tyler's lawyer was painting me as a habitual liar who refused to accept responsibility for my actions. He continued in this vein for over an hour, twisting my words and taking incidents out of context to make me look unstable and vindictive. By the time he finished, I felt like I'd been put through a shredder. But then Dr. Chen took the stand, and everything changed. She presented the medical evidence calmly and professionally, explaining the pattern of healed fractures she'd found and why they were inconsistent with normal childhood accidents. In your professional opinion, Ms. Walsh asked, are these injuries consistent with systematic abuse? Yes. The location and pattern of the fractures, combined with their frequency over a 3-year period, strongly suggests intentional trauma rather than accidental injury. Tyler's lawyer tried to argue that the injuries could have been caused by sports or general teenage clumsiness, but Dr. Chen's testimony was devastating. She'd seen thousands of facial injuries in her career, and she knew the difference between accidents and abuse. Detective Morrison testified next, describing Tyler's behavior during his interview and the inconsistencies in his explanations for my injuries. Then came the character witnesses for both sides. Sarah testified about the changes she'd noticed in my behavior over the years, how I'd become more withdrawn and anxious. My chemistry teacher talked about my frequent injuries and how I'd flinch at sudden movements. Even my cousin Emma flew in from Portland to testify about Tyler's inappropriate behavior during family gatherings. The defense called their own witnesses. Rick testified that Tyler was a model stepson who had never shown any signs of violence. Several of Tyler's friends described him as gentle and protective. His football coach talked about his leadership qualities and good character. But the most devastating testimony came from my mother. She took the stand wearing the same dark sunglasses, her voice barely above a whisper as she described me as a troubled teenager who had always been jealous of Tyler. Melody has always been a dramatic child, she said. She tends to exaggerate situations to get attention. In your opinion, Tyler's lawyer asked, is your daughter capable of fabricating these allegations? My mother was quiet for so long that the judge asked her to repeat the question. When she finally answered, her voice was steady and clear. Yes, I believe she is. The words hit me like a physical blow. My own mother, under oath, had just told a courtroom full of people that I was a liar.
that I was capable of destroying an innocent person's life for attention. I watched her walk back to her seat, and I realized that our relationship was over. Whatever bond had existed between us was irreparably broken. She had chosen Tyler and her marriage over her own daughter, and there was no coming back from that. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, Tyler stood to hear the verdict with his lawyer beside him. I sat in the gallery with Nana, my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. On the charge of assault in the 3rd degree, we find the defendant guilty. Tyler's shoulders sagged. Behind him, my mother let out a strangled sob. On the charge of assault in the 2nd degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of sexual harassment of a minor, we find the defendant guilty. The judge set sentencing for the following month. Tyler would likely face jail time, though his lawyer would argue for probation given his age and lack of prior convictions. As the courtroom emptied, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I had won, but the victory felt hollow. Justice had been served, but my family was destroyed. Tyler would face consequences for his actions, but I would still be the girl who sent her stepbrother to jail. My mother walked past me without a word, her arm linked through Rick's. They had made their choice, and it wasn't me. But Nana squeezed my hand, and Sarah hugged me tight, and Detective Morrison gave me a proud smile. I wasn't alone, even if I'd lost the family I'd thought I had. 3 months later, Tyler was sentenced to 18 months in jail, followed by 3 years of probation. He was also required to register as a sex offender and undergo counseling. Rick's divorce from my mother was finalized a week after the sentencing. I stayed with Nana for the rest of my senior year. My mother made a few half-hearted attempts at reconciliation, but they always came with conditions. She wanted me to admit that I'd exaggerated Tyler's behavior. She wanted me to apologize for breaking up the family. She wanted me to pretend that none of it had really been that bad.
I couldn't do any of those things. I wouldn't go back to being the girl who swallowed her pain to keep everyone else comfortable. Instead, I focused on my future. I applied to colleges far from home, places where no one would know my story unless I chose to tell it. I volunteered with a local organization that helped survivors of domestic violence, sharing my experience with other teens who were afraid to speak up. The girl who had stood over a cheap grill in the emergency room, afraid to call abuse by its name, was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who understood that family wasn't just about blood relations or marriage certificates. Family was about people who protected you, who believed you, who chose your safety over their own comfort. I had lost the family I was born into, but I had found a new one. Nana, who had opened her home and her heart without question. Sarah, who had stood by me when it would have been easier to stay neutral. Detective Morrison and Dr. Chen and Miss Walsh, who had fought for justice on my behalf. Tyler had taken 3 years of my life, but he hadn't taken my future. He had broken my nose, but he hadn't broken my spirit. He had turned my mother against me, but he hadn't turned me against myself. And as I walked across the stage at graduation, accepting my diploma with Nana cheering in the audience, I realized something that would have shocked the scared 17-year-old in the emergency room. I was free. Finally, completely, utterly free. The truth had cost me everything I thought I wanted, but it had given me everything I actually needed. My voice, my strength, my future. No one could take those things away from me ever again. I was cleaning blood off my calculus homework when I realized my stepbrother had been hunting me for sport. The crimson drops were spreading across the equations I'd spent 3 hours perfecting, turning my careful work into abstract art that told a story I'd been too afraid to read. Tyler stood in the doorway of our living room, holding a bag of frozen peas he'd grabbed from the freezer, playing the role of concerned big brother while my nose gushed blood all over the coffee table. "Jesus, Aurora, I'm so sorry," he said, rushing to my side with practiced ease. "Here, tilt your head back and hold this against your nose." But I caught it in his eyes before he could hide it behind his mask of worry. That flash of satisfaction, that brief moment where his lips almost curved into a smile. He wasn't sorry. He was proud of his handiwork.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The taste of copper filled my mouth as I pressed the frozen peas against my face, and suddenly 3 years of accidents crystallized into a pattern I could no longer deny. This wasn't rough play or sibling rivalry or boys being boys like everyone kept telling me. This was deliberate. This was systematic. This was Tyler methodically breaking me down piece by piece while maintaining his golden boy reputation. I was 15 when Tyler first moved into our house in Millbrook, following Mom's whirlwind marriage to his father David. Tyler was 17 then, a senior in high school with the kind of easy charm that made adults instantly trust him. He helped carry groceries without being asked, remembered to take out the trash, and called my mother, ma'am, in a way that made her melt. "You're so lucky to have such a responsible big brother," my friends would say, and I'd force a smile while my stomach twisted into knots. The inappropriate touching started small, a hand on my lower back when he squeezed past me in the hallway, fingers lingering too long when he handed me something, standing too close when he helped me with homework, his breath hot against my neck as he leaned over my shoulder. "Tyler's just being friendly," Mom would say when I tried to voice my discomfort. "He's trying to bond with you. Give him a chance." But friendly brothers don't press their bodies against yours when there's plenty of room to move around you. They don't find excuses to touch your arms and shoulders and waist. They don't look at you the way Tyler looked at me when he thought no one was watching, like I was something he wanted to consume. The first accident happened 6 months after he moved in. We were playing one-on-one basketball in our driveway, and Tyler was losing. I'd always been athletic, and my jump shot was better than his, which clearly frustrated him. When I scored the winning basket, he grabbed the ball and fired it at my face from 3 feet away. The impact knocked me backward onto the concrete, splitting my lip and giving me a black eye that took 2 weeks to heal. Tyler immediately switched into concerned stepbrother mode, helping me up and apologizing profusely. "I was just trying to pass the ball back to you," he explained to our parents. "I didn't realize you weren't ready for it." Mom fussed over me with ice packs and ibuprofen, while David patted Tyler's shoulder sympathetically. "These things happen in sports," he said. "You kids just need to be more careful." I wanted to scream that basketball passes don't usually come at your face like fastballs, but Tyler was nodding along sadly, playing his part perfectly. Who was going to believe that the sweet, helpful stepson had deliberately hurt his new sister? The incidents escalated slowly over the next 2 years, Tyler helping me rearrange furniture in my room, only to accidentally slam the corner of my dresser into my ribs. Wrestling matches in the living room that always ended with me getting hurt while Tyler emerged unscathed. Volleyball games at family barbecues where the ball somehow always found my face when Tyler was serving. Each time, Tyler had a plausible explanation. Each time, our parents accepted it without question. Each time, I was left to deal with bruises and pain while Tyler basked in sympathy for feeling so terrible about hurting me. "You need to be more careful around Tyler," Mom started saying after the 4th or 5th incident. "He's bigger and stronger than you. Maybe you shouldn't roughhouse so much." The implication was clear. These accidents were somehow my fault for not being more aware of my own limitations. I was the problem, not Tyler's pattern of hurting me. But it was more than just the physical violence. Tyler had also begun a campaign of psychological warfare designed to isolate me and make me question my own sanity. He'd move my belongings and then act confused when I accused him of taking them. He'd make sexual comments when we were alone, then switch to innocent conversation the moment anyone else appeared. "You look really good in that skirt, Aurora," he'd whisper as I walked past him in the kitchen. "It shows off your legs." When I'd turn around in shock, he'd be studying his phone with a perfectly neutral expression, as if he'd never spoken at all. If I confronted him, he'd look genuinely puzzled. "I said your skirt looked good. I was just being nice. Why are you making it weird?" The gaslighting was almost worse than the physical abuse because it made me doubt my own perceptions. Was I imagining the sexual undertones in his comments? Was I being paranoid about his intentions? Maybe I really was just clumsy and accident-prone like everyone seemed to think. Tyler was particularly skilled at timing his attacks for maximum psychological impact. He'd hurt me right before important events, ensuring I'd have to explain away injuries during school pictures or family gatherings. He'd escalate his behavior when I was already stressed about exams or college applications, adding to my emotional burden when I was least equipped to handle it. The night that changed everything started typically enough. I was sprawled on the living room couch working on calculus problems while Mom worked late at her accounting firm and David attended his weekly poker game. Tyler came downstairs from his room, ostensibly to get a snack from the kitchen, but I could feel him watching me as he moved around the house. "What's the math genius working on tonight?" he asked, settling onto the couch beside me uninvited. I should have gotten up and moved to my room, but I was tired of being driven away from common areas of my own house. I was tired of tiptoeing around Tyler's moods and managing his behavior. I just wanted to finish my homework in peace. "Calculus," I said without looking up from my textbook. "Need any help? I was always good at math." "I'm fine, thanks." Tyler scooted closer, his thigh pressing against mine. "Come on, let your big brother help you out. I bet I could teach you some things." The way he said things made my skin crawl, but I kept my eyes on my homework and tried to ignore him. That's when he grabbed my notebook, holding it about his head like we were children playing keep away. "Tyler, give it back. I have a test tomorrow." "Maybe we should study together," he said, his voice dropping to that tone that always made my stomach turn. "I could tutor you. I'm really good with my hands." I lunged for the notebook, desperate to get it back and end this interaction. That's when Tyler's elbow came down across my face like a sledgehammer. The crack was audible, and blood immediately began pouring from my nose, splattering across my homework and the white couch cushions. The pain was incredible, radiating through my entire face and bringing tears to my eyes. "Oh shit, Aurora!" Tyler jumped up, instantly transforming into the concerned stepbrother. "I'm so sorry. You moved so fast, I didn't see you coming." But I had seen his face in that split second before impact. I had seen the calculation in his eyes, the way he positioned his elbow to maximize damage.
This wasn't an accident any more than any of the others had been accidents. Mom and David came running when they heard me screaming. Tyler was already in full damage control mode, getting ice and paper towels while explaining how the accident had happened. "We were just messing around with her homework," he told them. "She jumped up to grab her notebook and my elbow caught her nose. I feel terrible about it." "These things happen," David said, patting Tyler's shoulder. "You kids play too rough sometimes." "But he did it on purpose," I said, through the bloody tissues pressed against my face. "Aurora, enough," Mom snapped. "Tyler already explained what happened. It was clearly an accident." "Boys will be boys," David added dismissively. "Tyler's just not used to having a sister around yet. You'll both learn to be more careful." I stared at them in disbelief. My nose was clearly broken, blood was everywhere, and they were more concerned with comforting Tyler than getting me medical attention. "I think we should take her to the hospital," Tyler said, playing his role perfectly, "just to make sure it's not broken." "You're right," Mom said, grabbing her purse. "David, can you drive us?" "I can take her," Tyler volunteered. "You guys have been working so hard lately. I caused the problem, so I should fix it." That's how I ended up in Tyler's Honda Civic at midnight, driving to the emergency room with the person who had just deliberately shattered my nose. The ride was silent except for the radio and my labored breathing through my mouth. "You know," Tyler said as we pulled into the hospital parking lot, "accidents happen all the time, especially to people who don't know when to mind their own business." The threat was unmistakable, but I was too exhausted and in too much pain to respond. I just wanted to get inside and away from him. The emergency room was surprisingly busy for a Tuesday night. The triage nurse took one look at my face and fast-tracked me to an examination room, where I met Dr. Patricia Williams, the physician who would change my life. Dr. Williams was probably in her 40s, with graying brown hair and the kind of calm competence that immediately put you at ease. She examined my nose gently, asking questions about pain levels and whether I was experiencing any dizziness or nausea. "We're going to need x-rays," she said, "and I'd like to do a CT scan to check for any other facial fractures." Tyler shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Is all that really necessary? It was just an accident." Dr. Williams looked at him for a long moment before turning back to me. "I like to be thorough with facial injuries. They can be more complex than they initially appear." The X-ray confirmed what we already knew. My nose was broken in 2 places. But it was the CT scan that revealed the devastating truth. When Dr. Williams returned with the results, she closed the door and pulled her chair close to my bed. Aurora, I need to ask you some questions, and I want you to know that anything you tell me is confidential unless you're in immediate danger. My heart started racing. What do you mean? The CT scan shows evidence of multiple healed fractures in your facial bones. Some of these injuries appear to be months or even years old. She leaned forward, her voice gentle but serious. This pattern is consistent with repeated trauma to the face and skull. I felt the room tilt slightly. Tyler was suddenly very interested in his phone, scrolling through Instagram like he wasn't listening to every word. Has someone been hitting you, Aurora? Have you been injured like this before? I looked at Tyler, who had gone completely rigid in his chair, then back at Dr. Williams. Something about her steady gaze and the clinical fluorescent lighting made it impossible to lie. Yes, I whispered. The words seemed to echo in the small examination room. Tyler's head snapped up from his phone, his eyes narrowing with what looked like genuine fear for the first time since I'd known him. When did these other injuries occur? Dr. Williams asked. Different times over the past 3 years, I said, my voice getting stronger, but everyone said they were accidents. Can you tell me about them? I glanced at Tyler again. He was staring at me now, and I could practically see him calculating how to spin this situation to his advantage. There was one time about a year ago when Tyler was helping me move furniture in my room. The corner of my dresser hit my cheek when we were carrying it. That really was an accident, Tyler interrupted quickly. The thing was heavier than we thought. Dr. Williams held up a hand. I'd like to hear from Aurora, please. She turned back to me. What else? Last spring, we were playing basketball in our driveway, and the ball hit me in the face really hard. Tyler was the one who threw it. The words were coming easier now. 3 years of suppressed truth finally finding voice. And there was another time when we were wrestling in the living room and I hit the coffee table. Were you playing sports or roughhousing in all these incidents? Tyler was always there, I said, and afterwards he'd always act really sorry and helpful, but right before it happened, I'd see this look in his eyes. What kind of look? Like he was pleased, like he wanted to hurt me. Tyler shot up from his chair. This is insane. Aurora, what are you saying? I would never hurt you on purpose. Dr. Williams pressed a button on the wall, and within seconds, a security guard appeared at the door. Sir, I'm going to need you to wait outside while I finish examining my patient. I'm her ride home. Her parents asked me to stay with her. We can arrange transportation, Dr. Williams said firmly. Please wait in the lobby. After Tyler left, the room felt different, like I could finally breathe properly. Dr. Williams sat back down and pulled out a notepad. Aurora, what you've just told me is very serious. I need to ask you some more detailed questions. Over the next 2 hours, I told her everything. About Tyler's inappropriate comments and unwanted touching, about the way he'd corner me in empty rooms and press himself against me, about the escalating accidents that always seemed to happen when we were alone. I described the psychological torture, the gaslighting, the moving of my belongings, the sexual comments, followed by innocent denials. I told her about feeling like I was going crazy, about doubting my own perceptions and memories. And your parents? Dr. Williams asked. What do they say when these incidents happen? They always believe Tyler, I said, the words bitter in my mouth. He's the perfect stepson, good grades, polite, helpful around the house. When I try to tell them that some of these accidents don't feel accidental, they say I'm being dramatic or paranoid. Dr. Williams nodded, taking detailed notes. What about tonight specifically? Walk me through exactly what happened. I described the homework incident in detail, Tyler's sexual comments, the way he grabbed my notebook, the deliberate calculation I'd seen in his eyes before his elbow connected with my face. When you reached for your notebook, did Tyler's elbow connect with your nose accidentally? I shook my head firmly. No, he saw me coming. I could tell by the way he positioned himself. And afterward, when he was getting me ice, he seemed almost satisfied, like he was proud of what he'd done. Dr. Williams finished writing and looked up at me. Aurora, I want you to know that I believe you. The pattern of injuries I'm seeing, combined with your testimony, strongly suggests systematic abuse. The word hit me like a physical blow. Abuse. I'd never called it that, never allowed myself to think of it in those terms. Tyler was my stepbrother. We lived in the same house. Our parents were married. It was just rough play, just accidents, just boys being boys. I know this is overwhelming, Dr. Williams continued, but you're not alone anymore. There are people who can help you, and there are legal protections available. A social worker named Maria Santos arrived within the hour. She was a soft-spoken woman in her 30s with kind eyes and a calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. Aurora, I specialize in helping young people who are experiencing abuse in their homes, she said. My job is to make sure you're safe and that you have all the resources you need. What happens now? I asked. First, we need to make sure you have a safe place to stay tonight. Do you have any relatives or friends you could stay with? I thought about it. My father lived in another state and we barely spoke. Most of my friends lived with their parents, and I didn't want to drag anyone else into this situation. But then I remembered my Aunt Linda, my mom's older sister who lived about an hour away. My Aunt Linda, I said. She's always told me I could come to her if I ever needed anything. Good, we'll call her. Sometimes family members who are outside the immediate situation can provide the support you need. Maria helped me call Aunt Linda, who answered on the second ring despite the late hour. Aurora, honey, what's wrong? It's almost 3 in the morning. Hearing her voice made me start crying again. Aunt Linda, I'm in the hospital. Tyler hurt me, and the doctor says it's not the first time. There was a long pause. What did that boy do to you? He broke my nose, but it's more than that. The doctor found evidence of other injuries, and I told them about things Tyler's been doing to me for years. I'm coming to get you right now, Linda said without hesitation. What hospital? Mercy General, but it's so late, and you have work tomorrow? Aurora, I have been worried about you for months. You've been different every time I see you, more withdrawn and anxious. I should have asked more questions. I'm getting in my car right now. Maria took the phone and spoke with Linda about logistics and legal requirements. Because I was 17, there were certain reporting procedures that had to be followed, especially given the pattern of abuse and the fact that I was living with my abuser. There will be a police investigation, Maria explained. Detective Sarah Coleman will be your primary contact. She specializes in domestic violence cases involving minors. Will Tyler be arrested? That depends on what the investigation reveals and what charges the district attorney decides to file, but you won't have to face this alone. While we waited for Aunt Linda, Dr. Williams documented my injuries with photographs and detailed medical notes. She explained that this evidence would be crucial if the case went to court. The pattern of healed fractures tells a story, she said. This isn't something that can be dismissed as teenage clumsiness or normal sibling roughhousing. Around 4 a.m., Aunt Linda burst through the doors looking like she'd thrown on the first clothes she could find. Her hair was in a messy ponytail and she wore no makeup, but her eyes were fierce and determined. "Where is he?" were her first words. "Tyler's in the lobby," Maria said. "Good, because if I see that boy right now, I might do something that gets me arrested." Linda hugged me carefully, mindful of my injuries. "Oh, sweetheart, I should have listened to my instincts about him years ago." "What do you mean?" "Something about Tyler never sat right with me. Too smooth, too charming, and I noticed how you changed after he moved in. You stopped talking as much at family gatherings, stopped laughing, but your mother was so happy with her new marriage, and I didn't want to cause problems." Linda signed the necessary paperwork while Maria explained what would happen next. There would be a formal police interview within 24 hours. Child Protective Services would conduct their own investigation. My parents would be notified of the situation and the allegations. "Your parents are going to want to see you," Maria warned. "But for now, you're safe to stay with your aunt while we sort everything out." As we walked toward the hospital exit, I felt a strange combination of terror and relief. Tyler was somewhere in that lobby, probably already crafting his version of events for our parents. By tomorrow, everyone would know what I'd accused him of. There would be no going back to pretending everything was normal. But for the first time in 3 years, I wouldn't be sleeping under the same roof as someone hurt me. For the first time since Tyler moved in, I felt like I could breathe. Linda's house was a small ranch-style home filled with plants and books and the kind of comfortable clutter that spoke of a life well lived. She made me chamomile tea and settled me on her couch with extra pillows and blankets. "Your mother's going to call," she warned, "probably multiple times. You don't have to talk to her until you're ready." As if on cue, my phone started buzzing.
Text after text from Mom, from David, even a few from Tyler himself. I turned the phone off without reading them and handed it to Linda. "I can't deal with that right now," I said. "You don't have to deal with anything right now, except healing," Linda replied. "Everything else can wait." I fell asleep on Linda's couch that night, surrounded by the smell of lavender and old books, feeling safer than I had in years. For the first time since Tyler moved in, I didn't have to listen for footsteps in the hallway or worry about unexpected visits to my room. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight was streaming through Linda's kitchen windows, and she was making pancakes like it was a normal day. Except nothing would ever be normal again, and for the first time in my life, that felt like a good thing. The girl who had sat in that emergency room 8 hours earlier, afraid to call abuse by its name, was gone. In her place was someone who had finally found her voice, someone who refused to be silently destroyed to preserve other people's comfort. I had told the truth, and the truth had set me free. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.